We began the lectureship because there was a general impression at DePauw, especially among the students, that there was a bubble hanging over DePauw, isolating DePauw students from the outside world. And we essentially said, we can bring the world to DePauw.
We came all the way from West Lafayette, Indiana.
Dayton, Ohio.
It's not every day that this kind of thing comes to DePauw.
It's really amazing.
Tony Blair is visiting Greencastle today. He'll speak at DePauw University tonight.
Standing out here waiting in line, we had a chance to ask them why Tony Blair was such an appeal for them. They said it was an opportunity they couldn't miss.
The former British Prime Minister's March 2008 visit to DePauw University completed a circle that began 50 years before. On June 8, 1958, Harold Macmillan, at the time the sitting Prime Minister of Great Britain, delivered DePauw's commencement address. Two of the graduates in the Blackstock Stadium procession that day were Tim Ubben and Sharon Williams.
I have chosen today as the theme of my address to you who are about to graduate into the world, the word interdependence. For it is my belief that this word must be the keynote of the second half of the 20th century if the progress of humanity is to continue.
After the diplomas were handed out and the caps and gowns put away, Tim and Sharon went on to get married, have children, and enjoy happy and successful lives. Strong supporters of their alma mater, the Ubbens generously and consistently gave back to DePauw over the years, and in the mid-1980s made a gift that was designed to provide opportunities for the university community that would be distinctive and unique, a lecture series unlike any before it.
Tim's idea, as I understood it at the time, was to provide enough money to DePauw to bring internationally known speakers to the campus and to be able to demonstrate that important conversations go on in Greencastle, Indiana.
Ubben Lecture Series in general has just allowed us, as a DePauw student, to connect with some of the great speakers, some of the great people of the current times. I mean, it's given us an opportunity to hear from, to learn from, and to interact with people that we otherwise would not have an opportunity to do so.
With lectures such as the talk by Dr. Farid Murad, the 1998 winner of the Nobel Prize in Medicine and a 1958 graduate of DePauw, the Ubben series has also showcased the contributions alumni have made to the world. More recently, students heard from 1983 graduate Jim Alling, the president of Starbucks Coffee International. All told, the guests have included 8 prime ministers, 7 presidential candidates, 7 cabinet members, 6 Nobel Prize winners, and 1 First Lady. All have been presented free of admission charge for everyone to enjoy.
It's always really cool, a week after, 2 weeks after, 2 months after, to hear people still talking about those talks. And it's a great asset that DePauw has held on to.
It was just after 9/11, just after the World Trade Centers, and I was in Dr. Bottom's leadership class.
The October 2001 DePauw visit by former British Prime Minister John Major began with a stop at the Memorial Student Union building, where he talked with and shared lunch with students in President Robert Bottom's leadership class.
Having the opportunity to speak with him in that forum and hear from someone not from this country talk about our leaders and how our leaders were handling things in that particular time, which is so poignant in history now, and then him following it up that evening with this fantastic lecture on life in the new world after 9/11 and talking about global terrorism and leadership and what we needed to do as a global society was just a phenomenal experience.
The events of September the 11th are about to give us all a master class in consequences. We need politics that confronts the uncomfortable, politics that rises above the short term and the soundbite, politics that is long term and that understands that it no longer controls all the pieces on the checkerboard.
Jesse Jackson, when he came to campus, was very energized. A lot of people were lining the streets, welcoming him.
The December 1992 DePauw visit by the Reverend Jesse Jackson included a speech to thousands in Neal Fieldhouse and a more intimate session with students in Meharry Hall.
After the election and hearing that although he had lost, the message was that, to keep on fighting for diversity, and the fact that he was an African-American male sort of stood as a reminder that although, as an African-American myself, although I'm a minority in the country, that doesn't mean that I don't have an opportunity, to one day, to run for office as he did. Great message and something that carries with me today.
Black on black crime is deplorable. Black on white crime, white on black crime is deplorable. It's fundamentally an ethical issue, not just an ethnic issue. But the way our minds are programmed, if a white harms a black, it's time to riot. The black harms a white, it's time for execution. If blacks harm blacks, it's kind of a permissive zone. And that leaves blacks unprotected by law to criminals. We must stop people from killing people no matter who they are and how they look. That's the ethical high road that we must pursue.
Peyton Manning filled the auditorium, Mike Krzyzewski did. Those were fun. They were both very well received. I would put those under the fun category, and that's a good thing.
I'm only a football player, but I am a football player who cares and one who is committed to making a difference. And I'll leave you today with the words of someone whose name I do not know, but whose thoughts I think everyone here should consider. Risk more than others think is safe, care more than others think is wise, dream more than others think is practical, and expect more than others think is possible. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
I think he brought a lot of messages that were really interesting, especially from a standpoint of our athletes, because a lot of things that he's saying, we're saying as coaches all the time. But when you hear it from him, for some reason, the exact same thing sounds a little bit different.
When I heard that I had an opportunity to speak to this group, it excited me. And it's because of the excellence that the school has. Take advantage of it. Get involved. And when you finish here, keep getting involved. Add depth to what you're doing. You'll be so darn happy. And then when you accomplish something and you jump for joy and you turn around, there'll be another person to hug. A lot of people today, they just want to jump for joy and there's nobody there because they haven't taken advantage of building teams. Thanks for allowing me to share some time with you tonight, and Godspeed, and let's beat Wabash, all right? All right, thank you.
A Democratic presidential candidate is trying to stir up support here in Indiana. Retired Army General Wesley Clark spoke at DePauw University tonight. First on Fox Tonight, Jessica D'Onofrio is live in the newsroom and tells us how he's giving President Bush some tough competition.
In the presidential race for less than a week, General Wesley Clark has drafted.
Perhaps the lecture I remember the best was when Wesley Clark came during his presidential run. Students were there to learn and to hear what he had to say, to question what he had to say, and to grow and develop themselves.
Just 6 days after announcing his candidacy for the White House, General Wesley Clark attracted thousands of people and the national media to DePauw for his Ubben lecture.
He was saying, each one of you in the audience, all 2,700 of you, have the opportunity to change the world in your own way.
Schools like this are really the heart and soul of America because you're participating in an educational experience here that prepares you not only for your employment, but for the kinds of citizenry that we need to protect this country, to keep it strong, to keep it free, and to keep it safe in the future.
Shimon Peres came to DePauw about 1 year after Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated in Israel, and security was very tight. I can remember to this day watching him walk into the Walden Inn, preceded by two handsome Israeli Secret Service men, each carrying a violin case, followed by two others, each carrying a violin case. And believe me, there weren't any violins in those cases.
It's an odd thing to pull up at 125 Wood Street and see a soldier in your front yard with a machine gun, or heavily armed. And that's what happened when Shimon Peres was here, and you had the Israeli people protecting him.
He's one of our favorites because I asked him at Bottom's house to take us around the Middle East. He went country by country by country, Lebanon, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and so forth, and talked about each one of those countries and their influence on the region and certainly on Israel, and it was absolutely fascinating.
The main thing he brought was, of course, his intellectual and emotional assessment of the problem of peace in the Middle East.
This is a season for peace, for enabling people to improve their economies, and they can do it by education, by science, by opening their markets, by opening their minds. And what happened in the Middle East is simply a demonstration what can be done in a most complicated story. I pray that you and us will use the years to come to continue determinedly, without any fears and any doubts, to enable the other half of humanity to enjoy peace and affluence and prosperity. And then we shall be true to our basic values as human beings. Thank you.
We all preceded his speech with a dinner at Dr. Bottom's house on Wood Street, and I was one of the first ones into the dining room. And Dr. Bottoms was seated on one side, and Shimon Peres was across the table from me. And again, these two gentlemen Tim was talking about, very handsome young Israelis, also acting very superior, and said to me, "How do we pull these draperies?" They were at the end of the dining room, and I said, "Well, those are purely decorative and they don't pull." And they said, "Well, when the shooting starts, get under the table and tell people to follow you." Not if the shooting starts, but when the shooting starts. That made an impact on me. That made me say, okay.
Britain's former Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher told a crowd at DePauw University this century is ending a lot better than it started. For proof, Mrs. Thatcher points to the defeat of dictators, the breaking up of the Soviet Union, and the crumbling of communism.
She was probably the best prepared of any speaker who came to DePauw. She invited me over when she landed in Indianapolis. We rode in the car together. We had private time, just the two of us, and I was amazed at her knowledge of DePauw. She had really done her homework. She took the Ubben lectureship seriously, and I appreciated that. I think she knew more about DePauw history than I do. People lined the walk, and it was fun. You know, it made me feel like a celebrity, and even though people had come, of course, to hear Margaret Thatcher.
It was for me a great honor to be asked to come and address people of this very famous university, which has a reputation for excellence, because excellence is the only standard worth striving for. And its achievement applauds not only those who reach it, but it pulls up standards everywhere else.